Morning came harsh and cold, the kind of dawn that settles deep into your bones and makes you question your sanity. We assembled in the yard, rifles in hand, packs weighed down with provisions and ammunition. The master ranger strode before us, his weathered face set in grim determination. "Remember the plan," he barked, his voice cutting through the frosty air. "Ironsides make noise, drive it toward the flanks. Night crawlers and headless men will be waiting to intercept. Stay in constant contact. If it crosses the lay, Captain Cole," he turned to me, his gaze sharp, "you and your squad pursue. The rest hold the line." We began the trek before the sun had fully risen, the path winding through the outskirts of town. Ravenhead was eerily quiet as we passed. Normally townsfolk would gather to see us off, offering prayers or well wishes, but today they stayed behind their curtains, watching from the shadows. A few brave souls waved or called out muted words of encouragement, but their voices were thin, uncertain. Fear was a tangible thing, pressing down on the town like a storm cloud. The headless men broke off first, their footsteps fading into the eastern woods. The Ironsides followed soon after, their noisy march echoing through the valley as they prepared to draw the creature out. By the time we reached our position on the western flank, the sun was high, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The Parsgate woods loomed before us, ancient and foreboding. Even the trees seemed hostile, their twisted branches like skeletal fingers reaching skyward. We spread out into a loose line, each ranger just visible to the next. "Hold position," I ordered through the radio, my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at my core. As we waited, the forest seemed to close in around us. The air was thick, heavy, with a tension that had no source. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, set my nerves on edge. I lit a cigarette, the acrid smoke grounding me as I scanned the tree line. The Parsgate forest was unlike any other place I'd known. There was an ancient wrongness here, a feeling that the land itself resented our presence. It wasn't just the creature we were hunting. It was the forest, alive and aware, watching our every move. Then, the first crack of gunfire shattered the silence. The sound came from the center, where the Ironsides were making their advance. It wasn't a single shot, but a full barrage, the staccato bursts of automatic weapons echoing through the valley. I dropped to a crouch, rifle at the ready, my heart pounding in my chest. The radio buzzed to life, a frantic voice cutting through the static. "Target is moving north. Repeat, moving north toward the lay. It's big bipedal, humanoid, dark fur. Moves damn fast. Night crawlers, advance!" I barked into the radio, signaling my team forward. We moved cautiously, rifles raised, eyes scanning every shadow. The forest was silent again, the gunfire fading into memory. Ahead of us, the blood trail began, dark droplets staining the forest floor, leading deeper into the woods. It wasn't much, but it was enough to follow. We pressed on, the trail winding through dense undergrowth and uneven terrain. The creature was moving fast, too fast for something injured. By the time the sun began to set, the blood trail had grown fainter, but the tracks remained massive, clawed prints that alternated between 2 legs and 4. It was toying with us, I realized, leading us deeper into its domain. The forest grew darker, the trees closing in like prison bars. Every step felt heavier, the weight of our packs digging into our shoulders. My team was silent, their usual chatter replaced by a grim determination. As night fell, we made camp, building a line of fires to keep the creature at bay. The flames cast flickering shadows, creating more phantoms than they dispelled. I sat by the fire, my rifle across my lap, listening to the forest breathe. Sleep was elusive, every snap of a twig jolting me awake. Somewhere out there, it was watching, waiting. The firelight danced around us, painting warped figures on the trunks of nearby trees. I took the first watch, pacing a slow, deliberate circle around our campsite. The weight of the rifle in my hands felt reassuring, though deep down, I knew it was a false comfort. This thing, whatever it was, had already proven it could outpace us. It wasn't a matter of if it would attack, but when. The forest seemed alive with its absence, the usual nocturnal sounds replaced by a heavy, unnatural silence. Even the wind didn't stir. It was during my watch that the howl came. It started low, almost a growl, rising into a sound that was neither wolf nor human, but a grotesque melding of both. The hair on my neck stood on end as the noise cut through the stillness. My team stirred, hands reaching instinctively for weapons. Another howl answered from the distance. A chilling call and response that made my stomach churn. This wasn't just one creature. There were others. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. I crouched low, motioning for silence. My heart was pounding in my chest, each beat loud enough to drown out the muffled clicks of rifle safeties being disengaged. The radio buzzed with life, Captain Ironside's voice cutting through the static. One of our fires got hit. No casualties, one injured. Target still heading north. Over. His tone was tight, clipped. This wasn't the voice of a man in control. It was the voice of someone who had seen something he couldn't explain. 7 to 8 feet tall, humanish, big teeth, it's moving fast. Copy that, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I scanned the tree line again, my eyes straining against the shadows. Whatever it was, it had already breached one line of defense. The fire seemed smaller now, barely a flicker against the encroaching dark. When my watch ended, I handed it off reluctantly, settling into an uneasy sleep with my rifle clutched tight against my chest. Morning broke cold and grey, the pale sunlight filtering weakly through the thick canopy. We packed quickly, stamping out the last embers of our fire and spreading ash over the campsite to mask our presence. The radio crackled again, Ironside's voice sharper now. It's bleeding. We've got a trail. Keep moving north. Over. The tracks were fresher now, the blood more frequent, a vivid red against the dark earth. The beast wasn't trying to hide anymore. It wanted us to follow. By midday, the forest began to thin, the trees giving way to the icy flow of the Lay River. Its waters churned cold and fast, a natural barrier cutting through the valley like a jagged scar. We regrouped with the other teams on the south bank, their faces pale and drawn. Ironsides had lost 2 men the night before, their bodies found shredded beyond recognition. The headless men hadn't fared much better. Their squad reduced to near silence after an ambush left 1 man grievously injured. The reports were the same. A towering humanoid figure with dark fur and eyes that glowed like embers. The captains gathered near the river's edge, their voices low. It's crossing into the Lakewash, Ironsides said, gesturing toward the northern forest. The blood trail leads straight into it. If we don't pursue, it'll disappear, and we'll be right back where we started. I nodded, my mind already made up. The night crawlers would cross first, following the beast into the unknown. The river was ice cold, the water soaking through our boots as we waded across. The northern forest loomed before us, darker and denser than anything we'd seen so far. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded, drawn into a trap. But there was no turning back now. The Lakewash was a different kind of forest, older, wilder, and somehow angrier. The trees stood taller here, their branches intertwining to form a near-impenetrable canopy. The ground was carpeted with moss and rotting leaves, the air thick with the scent of decay. The blood trail led us deeper, the tracks growing more erratic. The beast was slowing, its injuries taking their toll. We moved in formation, a main group of 4 with pairs flanking us on either side. 2 more served as a vanguard, scouting ahead, while the rearguard kept watch for anything following. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of boots on damp earth. The deeper we went, the more the forest seemed to close in, the trees pressing tighter together like ribs around a beating heart. As dusk approached, the vanguard radioed in. They had found a ranger station ahead, a small outpost we could use for the night. Relief swept through the group. A roof, even a flimsy one, felt like salvation. We quickened our pace, the promise of safety driving us forward. But when we arrived, all hope evaporated. The station was a scene of carnage. The 2 rangers who had scouted ahead lay in pieces, their blood soaking into the earth. 1 man was missing his head, his body slumped against the station's door. The other was torn open, his innards strewn across the ground like macabre decorations. The sight turned my stomach, the coppery stench thick in the air. Not even a shot fired, one of my men muttered, his voice hollow. We secured the station quickly, barricading the doors and posting guards at every entrance. Inside, the air was stifling, thick with unspoken fear. The walls seemed to close in, the weight of what we had seen pressing down on us. Nobody spoke as we ate a meager dinner, the silence broken only by the occasional scrape of a tin spoon against a mess kit. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind against the walls, set my nerves on edge. The radio was quiet now, the other teams maintaining their positions on the south bank of the Lay. We were alone, cut off from reinforcements. I sat near the observation tower's ladder, my rifle resting against my knee. The others were restless, shifting in their bunks or pacing the narrow room. The fire in the corner cast long, flickering shadows, their shapes crawling across the walls like specters. Just before dawn, the silence was shattered by a single, piercing howl. It wasn't far, maybe a mile at most. I jolted upright, my heart hammering in my chest. The others were already awake, weapons drawn, their eyes wide with fear. The howl came again, closer this time. It was joined by others, a chorus of inhuman cries that seemed to shake the very ground beneath us. When dawn finally broke, it brought no comfort. We buried the two rangers quickly, their graves shallow and hastily marked. The ground was too frozen to dig any deeper. The blood trail was still fresh, leading away from the station and deeper into the Lakewash. We pressed on, the air growing colder with each step. The howls from the night before still echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder of what was waiting for us. The trail led us to Blackwater Lake, a vast, still body of water that seemed to drink in the light. The surface was a mirror, reflecting the grey sky above. We made camp on its shores, the beast's tracks circling the water's edge before disappearing into the forest once more. That night I took the first watch, my eyes fixed on the water. The stillness was unnatural, the air thick with a tension I couldn't explain. When morning came, we were one man short. His bedroll was empty, his gear untouched. Tracks led from the camp to the water's edge, but they didn't return. One of the rangers muttered something about the Lady of the Lake, an old legend about a vengeful spirit that claimed lives under the full moon. I didn't have the energy to argue. With one less man, we pressed forward, every step heavier than the last. The blood trail was intermittent now, faint drops leading us into the narrowing forest. Each ranger kept his weapon drawn, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The Lakewash had never felt so alive and yet so devoid of anything comforting. Every creak of a branch or rustle of leaves set our nerves on edge, the forest seeming to whisper threats we couldn't quite hear. As the day stretched on, the beast's trail led us to a cave mouth nestled in the side of a rocky outcrop. It yawned before us like the maw of some ancient predator, dark and foreboding. The ground was littered with bones deer, wolves, even fragments of what looked disturbingly human. A sickly heat wafted from the entrance, carrying with it the stench of rot and death. The team hesitated. Nobody spoke, but the tension was palpable. I could see it in their eyes, the doubt, the fear, the unspoken question of whether we should turn back. One of the rangers muttered something about explosives at the ranger station, suggesting we collapse the cave entrance and bury whatever was inside. For the first time, I agreed with him. This wasn't something we could capture. It wasn't something we could kill, not easily at least. Max and I volunteered to return to the station and retrieve the explosives, leaving the rest of the team to hold position and ensure the beast didn't escape. As we turned back into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were abandoning them to their deaths. The journey back to the ranger station was grueling. We moved at a brisk pace, pushing ourselves to the brink of exhaustion as the sun dipped lower and lower in the sky. The howls began again just before nightfall, distant but unmistakable. They were different this time, closer, more numerous. My stomach churned as I realized what it meant. This wasn't a lone predator. It was a pack. Max and I exchanged a grim look, our pace quickening. The radio crackled to life, a garbled transmission cutting through the static. "This is Captain Crawler. Does anyone read me? Status report, over." The reply was a cacophony of gunfire, screams and snarls, the sounds of chaos and carnage. Through the noise, one word stood out, clear and terrible. Pack. The line went dead, leaving us in deafening silence. Max swore under his breath, his knuckles white against the stock of his rifle. "We need to move," he said, his voice trembling. I nodded, every muscle in my body screaming as we broke into a run. The forest closed in around us, the shadows deepening as the last light of day faded. The howls grew louder, closer, until they seemed to echo from all directions. My legs burned, my lungs heaved, but I didn't stop. There was no stopping now. We reached a clearing just before midnight. the moon casting an eerie glow over the forest floor. The howls were deafening now, the pack closing in. I stopped, raising my rifle, my breath fogging in the frigid air. Max did the same, his eyes scanning the darkness. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the pounding of my heart. Then it came. A hulking figure burst from the underbrush, its massive form illuminated by the pale moonlight. It was larger than any creature I had ever seen, its body rippling with muscle, its fur matted with blood. Its eyes glowed a sickly red, filled with an intelligence that chilled me to my core. It wasn't just a beast. It was something more. Max fired first, the crack of his rifle splitting the night. The bullet struck the creature in the shoulder, staggering it but failing to stop its charge. It lunged, claws outstretched, and collided with Max, sending him sprawling to the ground. I raised my rifle, my hands shaking, and fired. The bullet struck true, hitting the creature square in the head. It froze, its body convulsing before collapsing in a heap beside Max. I rushed to his side, my heart sinking as I saw the extent of his injuries. The creature's claws had torn through his side, blood pooling beneath him. His breathing was ragged, his face pale. "You got it," he whispered, a weak smile crossing his lips. "We're not out of this yet," I said, pulling him to his feet. He winced, leaning heavily against me as we stumbled forward. The howls were still there, distant but persistent. This wasn't over, not yet. It took hours to reach the ranger station, every step a battle against exhaustion and fear. When we arrived, I barricaded the doors, dragging furniture against the entrances and loading every weapon I could find. Max collapsed onto a bunk, his breathing shallow. I knew he wouldn't make it, but there was no time to mourn. The pack was coming. I radioed the other teams, my voice shaking as I relayed our position. Ironsides and the headless men were on their way, but they were hours out. We were on our own. The explosives were in the storage room, a small consolation in the face of what was coming. Max's breathing stopped just before dawn, his body still and cold. I closed his eyes, my hands trembling. Outside, the howls grew louder, the pack drawing closer. I could see their shadows moving through the trees, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. I set the explosives, my hands moving on instinct. There was no plan, no strategy, just a desperate hope that I could take them down with me. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, the pack emerged, their forms silhouetted against the light. They were massive, their snarls echoing through the clearing. I stood my ground, my finger hovering over the detonator. This was it, the end. The fear that had gripped me for days was gone now, replaced by a calm resolve. I wasn't going to let them win. As the pack charged, I pressed the button.